Yeah, ja wiem. Okay. So hello, let's start with our next training with Vet Expert Academy. Sebastian Otto will present the training about diets. Please do not hesitate to ask questions. We will answer everything after the training, and enjoy. Sebastian, back to you.
Right. Good morning, everyone. I'll start from introducing myself. My name is Sebastian Otto. Some of you already know me, some of you don't. In Vet Expert company, I'm responsible for R&D division in pet food. And my main focus of my jobs are obviously veterinary diets, being veterinarian myself. But I work also a bit on maintenance food, life stage products. But this presentation will solely be focused on veterinary diets. So I'll share I'll start from sharing the screen with you. And I'll open the presentation. Just if you can let me know if you can see my screen, if it works. Now you should see some space thingy. Okay, so you can see it, right? Okay, so I'll now start the presentation. Now you should be seeing the presentation, and as I said, we will talk today about the portfolio of our veterinary diets. Again, some of you probably already know those products. For some of you, it's a novelty product. In this presentation, I'll try to focus on. Let's say I always try not to make a daft presentation, and I'll go product by product, explaining what's what in each single formula. I don't think it's something that you actually need for your daily job. Instead, I'll rather focus on the issue that the product was designed for. The specific medical condition or conditions that the product was designed for. We'll talk about those conditions a bit, sometimes in more detail, sometimes in less detail. We have 2.5 hours, so it's quite a lot, but still the topic of clinical nutrition, and it's a veterinary clinical nutrition. It's a very vast and complicated topic, and obviously I'll be able to share with you only some basic information. But in cases where I think that things are a bit more interesting and a bit more important, I'll focus on those topics a bit more. Okay, let's start. Let's start from my favorite quote, which explains the general atmosphere that surrounds nutrition. In general, nutrition, of course, not only veterinary nutrition, but pet nutrition as a whole. It's a very emotional topic. People take it very emotionally. Of course, it mainly applies to pet owners, but not only, also veterinarians. So let's say people that veterinary diets, the group of people that veterinary diets were designed for as a clinical tool, they also tend to become every now and then quite emotional when it comes to how to feed, what to feed, when to feed, and so on and so forth. What brand to use. I was always wondering why it is like that. Why nutrition can be as emotional topic as, let's say, religion or politics. I don't know, to be honest. I mean, I think the main reason is because it's pretty easy for every single person to try it out, and to come. Everyone can come up with their own conclusions. Sometimes those conclusions are correct. Sometimes they are just based on this particular case, and that case doesn't really tell us much about about the whole picture. But in general, everyone and their mothers, they have their own opinion. Very often, they have their own opinion about nutrition, including clinical nutrition. So, what to feed when certain clinical problem occurs. And vets around the world, because I had the privilege for many years. It's been 10 years now since I've become the part of let's say pet food industry, and let's say clinical nutrition, pet nutrition had become my field of expertise. So I had the privilege to cooperate, to work with multiple veterinarians across the whole globe. Of course, mainly from Europe, but I had the privilege to travel all around the world and talk to veterinarians. And in general, the impression that vets are getting, no matter which part of the world we are talking about, is that they're getting less and less attention from pet owners. That people prefer to listen to some influencers on Instagram. They prefer to Google stuff rather than listen to the professional veterinarian. That's the impression. However, and perception. However, it's not entirely like that. I found a very interesting study that was testing, let's say, checking on how much people rely on veterinary advice coming from their veterinarian. And actually, those numbers, as you can see, are pretty high. Also, regarding food, it's way over 60% of dog and cat owners that strongly or somewhat rely on veterinarians for advice. So I would say it's not as bad as some veterinarians might think. They are still very influential opinion leaders, and they are very, let's say, their impact on what people choose, what products people choose, what brands people choose, not just veterinary diets, but in general, food, is very strong. Um, Obviously, it varies. I mean, they rely more when it comes to like proper medications or some medical advice, like straight on medical advice. Those percentages are higher, but I believe that over 60% for food is still quite high. There is also there are very important trends that are going on in entire pet care business, and we have to remember that pet care business is there are multiple different categories of pet care. Of course, pet food is by far the biggest one, but veterinary services are also considered by some as part of the pet care business. And I'm sure you've heard about the term of premiumization of food, and that the trend in food is leaning towards premium products, and that actually is a good news for people operating, for brands operating in the veterinary channel, because vet diets are considered as definitely as a premium product. And also below that, you can see increasing animal healthcare expenditure, and that's also something that that's like a global trend. That also means that people are willing to spend more and more on high quality products when it comes to pet food. So when we are talking about vet channel, and vet diets are the product that is designed for the vet channel. Of course, it depends from country to country, from market to market. Sometimes vet diets are not so strictly connected to the vet channel, but they're in any case they are connected in one way or another. I mean, main channel that is recommending vet diets is basically always that starting point is always the vet channel. So we'll be focused today on that channel and products designed for that channel. Of course, pet food as as the whole market. If we want to divide it into different channels, there are modern channels like e-commerce, grocery, uh, classic channels, traditional channels like pet specialty, so pet shops and chain of shops, breeders and veterinarians, they all are affected by e-commerce. Pet specialty is more affected by grocery, and they all affect each other. So that's also very important. And I always, especially when I'm doing the presentation for the distributors, I always try to underline that it's very, very important to make sure that your customers that you work with, know that actually they need to cooperate in one way or another. I know it's very difficult, sometimes it's impossible, but in perfect case scenario, those traditional channels, so vet, breeder, pet specialty, they should work together, and they should use recommendation of one another to be able to compete with modern channels, so mainly e-commerce, but also grocery channel. That's the only way. I mean, e-commerce and grocery channels are by far the biggest ones currently in the business, and they're a big threat for the business in those traditional channels. So, in my opinion, the only way to defend traditional channels from modern channels is the cooperation. When we were talking about you are all from different countries, different markets. Markets can be defined. Say the potential of the market when it comes to pet food can be defined using the caloric coverage. The caloric coverage tells us what is the percentage of pets that are using commercial products on the given market. So that are not fed, with leftovers, with homemade food. They're using commercial product of any sort. It can be bought in supermarket. It can be bought in a fancy pet store. And actually, as you can see, countries, let's say, we can divide the countries regarding caloric coverage into developed countries, like the US or Western Europe, where caloric coverage is way over 80%, and countries, developing countries like Eastern Europe, Central Europe, South Europe, Asian countries, and so on, where the caloric coverage is still low or very low. And actually, if you are from one of those countries with low caloric coverage, it's actually a very good news for you, because that means that there is a lot of space to grow. There are a lot of spaces which you can use, and basically make those spaces your own space. In more developed markets like France, for example, where you can see for cats caloric coverage is over 100%, which means that French people are buying more pet food products for cats that actually cats living there need from caloric standpoint. In order to achieve anything on that market, you basically need to kick someone out. On markets like Polish market, Czech market, Romanian market, where this caloric coverage is much lower, it's actually from the perspective of the commercial, from the perspective of the importer, distributor, however you call it, it's a very good news. Now, interesting fact about pet food industry as a whole is that around 40% of global turnover is done by two companies. Basically, around 40% of total turnover in pet food sales is done by either Mars or Nestle. That means they have huge impact they had huge impact on pet food development, and definitely we should praise them for all the research and all the job that they did to promote modern pet food, to create pet food that we know today. However, now they are, let's say, abusing that, and that's their right as a big corporate. But just keep in mind that a lot of things that are going on the market, also from the legislation standpoint, are basically dictated by those two companies, and that's also very important when we'll get to the vet diets. But I'll get back to that topic in a second. So when it comes to where we can position veterinary diet as a product on this quality to price chart, I mean, obviously it will be somewhere there, right? So, I mean, we can divide quality of products in pet food into gazillions different categories, and I mean, the most basic is to divide into economy products and premium products. However, it's in my opinion, on modern market, it's way too big simplification. So I'd rather divide premium into several categories, because we can have really bad premium products and really good premium products, which, if they're even better, then we can call them super premium or hyper premium, ultra premium, however you want. And that's the key, however you want, because there is no legal definition of what is premium, what is economy. And there is a legal definition, and it's a very new thing, because it was established legally around 2-3 years ago, what a veterinary diet is. However, when it comes to maintenance food, it's all about the producer, how they position the product, quality wise, price wise, and then of course it's kind of self-regulated by the market and by people who actually know whether the product is good quality or not. But yeah, for the sake of this presentation, we'll be talking about this, let's say, top shelf. I consider vet diets to be on the top of this chart from the price standpoint and also quality standpoint, and that's where we as a company want to be present, not just when it comes to vet diets, but also when it comes to maintenance food. So raw paleo line, we want to be there. That's our goal, and that's the customer that we are aiming for. So let's start from before we go into the product part of the presentation. Let's shortly explain what a veterinary diet actually is. And it's important to know that, to remember that actually it is a pet food product, right? I mean, it is a pet feed, animal feed. Remember, there is nothing, let's say, there are no pharmaceuticals, there is no medication as such that is added to a veterinary diet, because this is a very common misconception. I mean, people think that if it's called a veterinary diet, that it means that there is some magical integration in the product which makes it a medical product. Actually, on most markets, sometimes it's more strict, sometimes it's less strict. But you cannot really say that a veterinary diet, legally, you cannot say that veterinary diet is treating a disease, even if there are cases that we know that it actually is. There are diseases like chronic kidney failure, where actually a veterinary diet and the proper diet is a key to the success. I mean, without it, I mean, we are just lost, no matter what kind of medications we'll use instead of it. But legally, we need to avoid terms like that this or this diet is treating something and treating a disease, because it's not. We need to say that it supports treatment. The veterinary diet is the treatment support. So it provides certain, because actually from legal standpoint, it isn't, as I said, animal feed, but animal feed that was composed and formulated in a very, sometimes very specific way, in order to support, keyword here, support treatment of certain diseases. And the category as such, I told you that 40% of the market, of pet food market, whole pet food market, is dominated by two brands, Royal, Mars and Nestle. In case of veterinary diets, I would say that it's probably around 80%. Wherever you go, whatever market we are talking about, there is like top three, this holy trinity of veterinary diets that you'll find everywhere in the world. Of course, in different ratio, but wherever you go on whatever market you approach, basically you will always find that market leaders are either Royal, Hills, or Proplan veterinary diets. Proplan, it's not as popular as Hills or Royal when it comes to diets, but still you'll find it on most markets. And then you have the whole bunch of brands that let's say fight for that remaining, I would say 20-30% of the market, uh, including us. So Vet Expert is one of those brands. But actually, when I said a bunch, actually I would rather use the word handful of brands, because it's not much. When we think about maintenance food and life stage products, you'll find on each market hundreds of brands, if not hundreds, then dozens of brands. There are loads and loads of different brands of pet food that you'll find on every market. But when it comes to vet diets, it's actually not as obvious. Usually you'll find this holy trinity or holy duo, Royal Hills, and then you'd have two, maximum three brands that on each market will be, let's say, this, they will be fighting for this number three or two. There are very few pet food brands when we are thinking about the whole industry. And as I said, hundreds of brands. There are very few brands that actually approach the vet channel and veterinary diets as a product. It's not an easy channel to it's not an easy channel to approach. It requires certain level of skill and certain level of expertise in order to work with the vet channel. Vet Expert is the company that, I mean, vet channel is in our DNA. We started off as the brand, which was, let's say, we were working exclusively with the vet channel. So vet channel and veterinarians were our first customers, and therefore it made for us. I mean, it was fairly easy for us to approach this, because that's our field of expertise. While when you think about most pet food brands on the market, um, very rarely they would start off from the vet channel and then go, let's say, down towards other channels like breeder channel, pet shop channel, and so on. Usually they started from classic pet food, became successful with it, achieved certain level of market share, certain level of expertise, and that allowed them to grow into the vet channel. It's by far, in my opinion, the hardest channel to work with. Not just because products are the most complicated when we are talking about pet food, but uh, also I believe veterinarians as customers, and I'm speaking as a vet myself, are difficult to work with. So uh, that would be, let's say, the introduction part, and now we can go into we can move on. So that was a segue into the actual part when we'll be talking about vet expert products in the vet channel, segment. So this is the chart showing our vet diet portfolio. As you can see, it is pretty big. There are not that many brands on the market. Of course, I'm not comparing it to the market leaders. I'm not comparing it to Royal or Hills or Nestle. They have basically everything, especially Royal and Hills. Actually, Nestle portfolio is not that big. Um, but when we are talking about all other brands, this portfolio seems pretty okay, actually. However, it's not complete, and let's be honest. There are some gaps, and there are some products missing that we definitely need to approach, and we are definitely working on. I mean, that's one of let's say, reasons why I'm here, why I joined Vet Expert, is to work on this portfolio. And you can see the big gap here, for instance, right? So there are many products that are missing on the dry part when it comes to cat diets. Of course, for cats, we can argue whether the dry portfolio is more important than wet. Again, it depends from market to market, but in general, people consider wet portfolio to be more important when it comes to cat. However, it's also way less economical than dry portfolio, and many markets need the dry version of the vet cat diet also for economical reasons, and that's one of the main goals that I have in the company. One of the main goals is to fill those gaps and also increase our, let's say, presence in dry vet diet segment. Some minutes ago, I told you that vet diet has been legally defined, some only 2-3 years ago, and that's actually true. I mean, for many years, nobody really could define legally what a vet diet actually is. And there were many interpretations of what the vet diet is, what the vet diet is not, how it should be formulated, blah, 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 blah. And then FEDIAF, which is the organization of pet food producers. I mean, it's the organization for the pet food producers working in Europe. Their scientific division came up with the idea of Parnat. So they would define 21 diets, which can be called as feed for particular nutritional purposes, hence the name Parnat. And that was presented to the EU as the idea of how to legally define the vet diet, and typical lobbying, and that was accepted. And basically, for 3 years now, we have the EU regulation. So the FEDIAF recommendation became EU regulation, and that's actually a very typical route that pet food industry is taking these days. So certain organizations like FEDIAF or AFCO are presenting certain guidelines and recommendations, and then over the course of time, they are becoming the actual law. And that's what happened with veterinary diets. So the FEDIAF recommendation regarding diets became the Parnat regulation. And we have, as I said, 21 cases, 21 situations in which we can formulate certain product. There is a big table which is giving you sometimes very precise data and recommendations. Sometimes they are not very precise, but they're basically giving you hints on how the vet diet should be composed, what it should contain, what it mustn't contain, how it should be used, what should be reported on the label, what you shouldn't put on the label, and so on and so forth. So I highly recommend you to, because if you are from Europe, and if you are from EU, that applies to your market as well. So when you are preparing, for example, declaration of the product, you're translating the declaration of the product. I mean, of course, you'll get from us the English version, Polish and English version of the declaration. But when you'll be doing the translation to your own local language, you can Google the Parnat regulation, and because of course it's translated into all EU languages, and check what exact what terms in your language are approved to be used, because there are some differences. I mean, it's not it's a legal language, so that sometimes the straight translation from English wouldn't work legally in your country. And for example, in Polish, there are several examples of terms which, if I would translate them directly using like common sense from English, they wouldn't be legally accurate. So always bear that in mind. But you can be sure that all the products that we prepare and that we offer, no matter if they are sold in EU or in non-EU countries, it doesn't really matter. They all meet those Parnat regulations. So all our products are formulated with the Parnat regulation in mind, and very often accessing what actually Parnat requires. Because of course there are only certain basics which are listed there, but there are a lot of things which you can add to the product to make it more sophisticated, to make it more effective, which are not actually, as of yet, part of the regulation. So we'll start from going into more practical section of the presentation. We'll start from the gastrointestinal tract, so nutritional solutions for GI tract, and we'll start from that because, generally speaking, gastrointestinal diseases are, or if we would want to use more medical term, nutritionally responsive gastrointestinal diseases are cases of are like number one case where people go to the vet in the first place. Of course, excluding situations like vaccination, for example, or deworming, some prevention medicine, regular checkups. If we exclude that, people go to the vet because something is going wrong with the gastrointestinal tract. So we have either the incident of diarrhea, loose stool, vomiting, and so on and so forth. And there are several diseases. I mean, of course, there are hundreds of diseases related to gastrointestinal tract, but let's say top 5 of diseases which are nutritionally responsive, so which we can approach from nutritional standpoint, are all the sorts of gastroenteritis, diarrhea, malabsorption, maldigestion, enteropathies, hot topic in modern veterinary medicine, enteropathies, so IBD, ARE, FRE, and so on, and exocrine pancreatic insufficiency or pancreatitis. And those diseases are like, let's say, top 5 of cases in which certain nutritional treatment can be applied. And actually, I mean, we are talking about let's say a huge market, because market for gastrointestinal type of products is huge because of the frequency of cases related to gastrointestinal tract. However, the product itself, so the classical gastrointestinal diet, is in fact very, very simple in formulation. So basically, when we go into Parnat regulation, it basically says that it needs to contain highly digestible ingredients without really defining what that actually means. Low level of fat, okay, an increased level of electrolytes. And that's it. That's basically what a gastrointestinal diet should be like according to Parnat. Of course, I'm not talking about the exact declaration, what should be on the label, and so on. I'm speaking from sheer formulation standpoint. And actually, we have 2 products, let's say classic intestinal diets that meet that regulation and can be considered as a classic intestinal diet. So both intestinal for dog and intestinal for cat in dry version, they have proven digestibility of over 90%. And that digestibility comes mainly from the fact, of course, the quality of the raw material that was used, but also the very low level of fiber that you will usually find in intestinal products. Usually when you go through the labels of all intestinal products that are available on the market, they have fiber level below 2%, which is really low. And you have to remember that more fiber in the product, it means smaller digestibility. So less fiber, higher digestibility. Low fat content, because it's below 10%, which is very low. And that's actually, this fat content must be low if we want to address the product for the pancreatitis and exocrine pancreatic insufficiency. And some extra level of sodium and potassium. Now, this is according to the regulation. Yes, those products contain usually higher level of sodium and potassium than your regular pet food. However, let's be honest. I mean, this is not something that will compensate massive electrolyte loss that is occurring during diarrhea, for example, or vomiting. You'll need some sort of liquid therapy anyway. But yeah, it will definitely help. So all products designed for intestinal diseases have higher levels of those electrolytes. And we have the third product for intestinal diseases, intestinal elimination dog. And this is actually a very unique and very interesting product, but I'll get back to this product because it's connected not just to intestinal diseases. It can be used for that. It's formulated to meet all the requirements of the typical gastrointestinal type of product. However, it also shows the effectiveness towards dealing with patients with adverse food reactions, food intolerance, food allergy, and so on. So it's like a dual function diet, like all elimination products from that expert range. And that's actually a very unique product. But again, we'll be talking about skin and food allergy and food intolerances. And in that part, I'll talk about all elimination products in more detail. What are other additional properties of that expert intestinal? So as I said, low fiber content because that increases digestibility. We have inulin added, so fructooligosaccharides, which is a probiotic, which is modifying alimentary tract microflora. There is also MOS, so mannanoligosaccharides, which are let's say boosting the local immune response. And we have the addition of ginger. Let's consider it as a superfood, which is exactly it's the extract of ginger, which is modifying alimentary tract peristalsis. I mean, the properties of ginger and its beneficial effect on gastrointestinal tract is well known since ancient times. So this is, let's say, this superfood factor in the intestinal range. But other than that, that's it. Of course, about each product we could talk for way longer, and extract every single detail from the formula, but and compare then one percentage to another. Take the competitor and compare, that we have 0.1% more sodium, and that makes our product better. But I don't like to do it. We don't have time for that. And actually, I want you to remember that our intestinal range of products, except elimination, because that's completely different pair of shoes. But when it comes to intestinal range, these are very high quality, among highest, most highly praised product on the market when it comes to gastrointestinal issues. But truth be told, there is not much we can add here to make it like a classic intestinal diet. And now liver, my least favorite part. I mean, liver as an organ is massively interesting. Like the amount of functions that the liver has in bodies is endless. I mean, basically the whole body metabolism is taking place there. You know, and beside metabolism of each single nutrient, basically, we have storage functions, digestive functions, detoxification, excretion functions, and so on and so forth. Massive organ, very complicated. And because it is so complicated, the clinical signs of liver insufficiency are very vast and not really specific. I mean, when we are talking about anorexia, weight loss, vomiting, diarrhea, polydipsia, polyuria, I mean, those symptoms are something that can be connected to many diseases, not necessarily connected with liver. And before some very obvious signs will occur, like jaundice, for example, or hepatic encephalopathy, or alcoholic pale feces, then it requires the disease to be on a completely different stage. When those signs occur, truth be told, we as vets, as doctors, and not just vets, it also applies to humans. We cannot really properly diagnose liver. I mean, it's very difficult to properly diagnose, very specifically diagnose liver diseases, and we can't really treat it. But liver is the organ with massive regeneration properties, self-regenerating properties. And basically what we need to do in perfect case scenario is to create the environment in which liver can regenerate itself. And it also applies to nutrition. It's very, very difficult to, because the liver diseases have let's say they are the root of the disease can be very different. Therefore, and the reasons why disease occurred can be very different. Therefore, there is no one way of the right liver nutrition from clinical standpoint. It all depends on the situation. Therefore, there is no like one product that would fit all. Very challenging thing, from very challenging organ from nutritional standpoint. But there are certain things which are, let's say, we can call them a pattern. So usually dogs, but also cats with liver disease, are catabolic, and they have increased energy requirements. So it's very, very important in case of most, again, not all, but most liver diseases, not to limit the energy requirements. I mean, not to limit, because energy requirements are higher than they usually would be. It's very important not to limit the amount of energy and calories that you provide with food. So that's very important. You always have to keep that in mind. And also the quality of the proteins. I mean, it's extremely important. I mean, it's very important when we are talking about nutrition in general. Also, when we are talking about healthy fat, it should be fat with high quality proteins. I mean, higher quality protein, the better. However, when we are talking about sick fat with increased requirements when it comes to the quality of the food, high quality proteins in the right amount, that becomes even more important. Acute liver diseases, it's not something I want to go through at all, to be honest, because in case of acute liver disease, usually we don't do anything from nutritional standpoint. Usually there is no need to do anything. And if there is need to do something, then usually it requires tube feeding, Therefore, the wet version of products suits better. But it doesn't really need to be the wet version of hepatic. It can be, for example, recovery can, which is very high in calories, very high in good quality proteins, high amount of fat. In case of acute liver disease, which is usually caused by some toxic injury, trauma, infection, we need to act really quickly, and therefore, usually, in most cases, there is no time to apply any nutrition pattern in this, let's say, within first 24 48 hours, when we are actually fighting for pet's life. Then we can, after we solved the initial problem, and then we have, let's say, reconvalescence time, then we can, of course, use the proper hepatic diet if we diagnose the problem as being, some sort of acute liver disease. And in this case, in pets that suffered from some acute liver disease, it's more, in my opinion, more suitable to use the wet version of the product rather than dry. It applies to all acute diseases, actually, and all acute cases in veterinary medicine, that from nutritional standpoint, wet products usually work better here. More interesting, and let's say diseases that we can do actually way more when it comes to nutritional treatment, are chronic liver diseases. But they're also very tricky in a way that etiology of the disease is often never determined. So we have certain symptoms, we have blood tests that indicate that something is going on, something's wrong going on with the liver, but actually we can't really find the cause. And luckily, as I said at the beginning, liver is a fantastic organ that can regenerate itself. So the most important thing is to create the environment and condition in which this organ can thrive and regenerate itself. And one of the factors that is creating this environment is the proper diet. And what such diet should contain, how it should be composed. I mean, obviously, it should be highly palatable. I mean, this is the obvious thing that applies to basically all pet food products, but it's especially important when we are talking about vet diets and clinical nutrition. Usually, sick pets have issues with palatability, especially in case of cats. They really don't want to eat. They have issues with accepting the food that they were previously eating with no issues. So higher palatability and very high palatability of vet diet is extremely important. In some diets, it's even more important, like in case of renal diets, so chronic kidney disease diets. But in general, we can come to the conclusion that palatability is the factor number one when we are talking about the vet diets. And palatability, of course, comes from raw material, quality of the raw material, the technology that was used to produce the product, and so on and so forth. Adequate level of high quality proteins. Of course, we want to limit the proteins a bit. We don't want to use, high protein diets like, 35-40% protein dry products, but we want to keep them as high quality as possible. Restricted copper and sodium, and copper is actually interesting part. In general, copper as a mineral is toxic towards liver. And when the liver is damaged, this copper toxicity is even more elevated. Therefore, all hepatic type of diets have always on the label, you'll find the level of copper, total copper, that is reported, declared. And actually, that's the only product, hepatic type of product, not vet expert product, but all hepatic, all products that are designed for liver disease, so hepatic like products, have this copper declared on the label. It's very important when we are approaching the patient with liver disease. It's very important to use this type of products with where copper is actually declared, and there is the assured by the producer that the copper level is of this and this level. It's not as strict with other products. And as I said, copper is very toxic towards injured liver. So it only increases the problem, the scale of the problem. And there are also some breeds where, let's say, this abnormal copper accumulation is even more of a problem. We have the typical breed, which is like predilected to that, Bedlington Terrier. However, okay, Bedlington Terrier used to be a very popular breed. Not sure about today, but still, if you have Bedlington Terrier, then you have to be very careful when it comes to copper. But also young West Highland Terriers, golden retrievers, they all have, they all might have issues with abnormal copper accumulation. And actually, that's one of the reasons why hepatic products also contain high levels of zinc, because zinc is this mineral that is competing with copper when it comes to its assimilation. But also zinc is the mineral that is enhancing the regeneration processes, not just in liver, but for example, all good quality skin products. So products designed for let's say skin regeneration should contain high levels of zinc. But other than that, it's a bit similar story to intestinal products, because of the vast level of diseases that intestinal products need to approach. This type of product can be really very specific, because there are so many diseases connected to gastrointestinal tract. Same case with hepatic product. Liver diseases are so, as I explained you, so complicated, so very difficult to diagnose, very often not diagnosed properly. They have so many different factors, underlying factors that are there. It's very difficult to create a hepatic product that would fit them all. So as the reason for that, the hepatic diet, usually it's formulated in a very classical, let's say, way, and very neutral way, without elevating one factor over another. So there are whole books about clinical nutrition, and the knowledge about liver clinical nutrition is there, and all producers, basically, the only way that is left for us is to create a product that would be as universal as possible. Therefore, when you'll be analyzing the market and you'll be comparing Vet Expert Hepatic to its competitors, you'll find that from analytical standpoint, from composition standpoint, it's actually, they are all very, very, very similar one to another. So what is very, but it is there. Not every producer that is operating in vet channel business even has the hepatic product in its portfolio. So that's actually a very big, let's say, advantage of Vet Expert, that we do have in our portfolio for dog in dry and wet version, for cat in wet version. So it is there for you to use. So it makes the entire portfolio complete. So several factors that are connected to hepatic product: moderate level of high quality proteins, perfect ratio. Actually, in this product, we have almost perfect ratio of omega-3 to omega-6, which should be around 1:3, 1:4. Reduced copper level. We already spoke about it, that this type of product is the only product where you have total copper exactly declared on the label, and very, very high level of zinc. Actually, this level of zinc is on the verge of being legal, so it's almost impossible to go higher than that. And there is, as I already explained, very good reason behind that. So zinc as a mineral is competing with copper assimilation, but also is enhancing and boosting the regeneration processes. There's also one thing which I would like to underline here. I don't have the the arrow that would indicate that, but take a look at the ingredient list. You have the soy lecithin at the end. Of course, you have the again some superfood addition, dried artichoke, which is also a well-known vegetable that works beneficially when it comes to liver. It's also, things that's been known for ages when it comes to artichoke, but also when it comes to soy lecithin. It's actually the additional source of phospholipids. So so it's the is this factor of the product which can work really well in conjunction with the supplements, with the liver designed supplements that we have in our supplement portfolio. So this is actually something that you won't find in every product, in every liver product on the market. However, as I said before, the essence of the product, of each hepatic-like product available on the market, whether it's Royal, Hills, Nestle, Farmina, whatever, they will be composed in a very, very similar way. Okay, and now, in my opinion, way more interesting topic when it comes to food and when it comes to nutrition. So very vast and very also controversial topic of adverse reaction to foods. As I said at the beginning, skin and gastrointestinal problems, with gastrointestinal problems being number one and skin being number two, are two most common complaints in small animal practice. So, as I said, the main reason why you'd go to the vet because something is going wrong with your cat or dog is because it presents some gastrointestinal issues or skin related issues. And very often those, both of them, so both gastrointestinal symptoms and skin symptoms can be the reason behind some sort of adverse food reaction that is going on in the body, either food intolerance or food allergy. And there is good reason why skin is so important, and why there are so many cases, clinical cases that refer to the skin. Skin is the largest body organ in dogs and cats, also in humans. The amount of different roles and functions that the skin has is sometimes underestimated. I mean, it's not just this external piece of thingy that surrounds our body and covers our fat and muscles. It's way more than that from many different perspectives, but obviously we don't have time to go through the skin physiology right now. And what is very important when it comes to skin and food is that skin and coat is, let's say, let's consider it as a part of the skin, we can consider it as a mirror of pet's health and quality of its food. So there are very different nutritional factors that can affect the condition of the skin. So quality of proteins and therefore amino acids, fatty acids, level of fatty acids, the ratio in which fatty acids are present in food, vitamins, trace minerals, and so on and so forth. There are several nutritionally responsive dermatoses, so the diseases that occur when we have, for example, that when we lack certain of certain nutrient. So the lack of proteins, vitamins, essential fatty acids can be the reason of so-called nutritionally responsive dermatosis. However, it actually happens very rarely these days, especially in more developed countries. So basically, pets that are being fed with commercial products which are labeled as complete. That's very important. Not all of them are labeled as complete, especially wet products or treats. But if they are being fed properly with a product which is labeled as complete feed, then nutritionally responsive dermatosis just cannot occur. It's almost impossible unless there is something that something's going wrong with the body itself. And for example, we have some malabsorption issues, right? So certain nutrients are not absorbed properly because something is going on wrong with the body, and then we can have the issue. But usually it's not the fault of food itself. So usually, as I said, dogs and cats that are consuming high quality, complete balanced pet food are unlike to suffer from serious deficiency or excess of any of these nutrients. Now, when it comes to diseases that are most frequent when it comes to skin, definitely atopic dermatitis. It's by far most frequently diagnosed form of allergic skin disease in dogs, which is characterized by several different symptoms, which are, again, not very specific: pruritus, self-trauma to the skin, secondary bacterial infections, chronic otitis externa, and so on. But what is very important when it comes to atopic dermatitis is a substantial proportion of dogs with atopic dermatitis are also affected by adverse food reactions. So when a veterinarian is dealing with a so-called atopic patient, they always need to keep in mind that there is 4 or 5 times greater risk of concurrently ongoing adverse food reaction, which the veterinarian also should take into consideration. So what is exactly adverse food reaction? Because bear in mind, I'm not using the term, or I'm trying to avoid the term of food allergy, which is being used, let's say, by most people. Most people would say, my dog is allergic to that. Usually it's chicken, right? So, and that's the term that ordinary people would use very often. So the dog or cat, but usually it's dog, is allergic to something, while actually in most cases it's not true. It's not actually allergic to anything. Food allergies as such are very rare, and therefore, if we want to use the correct term, we should use the adverse food reaction, because adverse food reaction explains all abnormal reactions that are occurring after ingestion of food, and then they can be mediated either by immune system or without the immune system. So adverse food reactions can be divided into immunologic reactions and non-immunologic reactions. Immunologic reaction is food allergy. So food allergy is connected with the immune system, and let's say the whole mechanism behind the food allergy, the whole mechanism why certain symptoms occur, all of them are connected to the abnormal reaction of the immune system. And we have non-immunologic reaction, which we call food intolerance. And to simplify it a bit, usually we can say that proteins are equals allergy, and carbohydrates equal intolerance. Of course, it is a simplification. It's not that simple. But I want you to remember that the allergy, so the food allergy, is caused by proteins. So there is no such thing as fat allergy or carbohydrate allergy. Of course, it doesn't mean that if we think about carbohydrate sources in food, so for example, potato or rice, it doesn't mean that we cannot be allergic to them. We can, but we won't be allergic to a starch, to a carbohydrate. We'll be allergic to a protein, because very often people forget that vegetables and fruits, they also contain proteins. So potato, peas, rice, corn, the soya, they all can be source, and they are the source of proteins in food, just vegetable source proteins. And the classic example of intolerance, which is very often called an allergy, is so-called milk allergy. Like some people would say, I'm allergic, I cannot drink milk, I'm allergic to milk. And okay, some people are truly allergic to milk, so they're allergic to proteins that are present in milk, but very often they have milk intolerance. So they are not, because of lack of certain enzymes, they are not able to digest milk properly. And when they drink milk, it's not getting digested, and they get osmotic diarrhea, and that's how it ends. But it's intolerance. They're not tolerating milk, but it's not allergy, because it doesn't. There is no immunological mechanism that is behind it. So the classic mechanism of allergic reaction when it comes to food allergy is IgE mediated mechanism. So it's called type 1 hypersensitivity. So we have several phases here. Sensitization phase, when food antigens are encountered by T cells, that leads to IgE production. Then we have hypersensitivity phase, which usually occurs, within seconds or minutes after the exposure. And then we have the effector phase, when released IgE activates mast cells, basophils, eosinophils, and so on, which then release inflammatory mediators, and then, so for example, histamine, and then in the end that leads to a rash, for example. So this is the classic mechanism of food allergy, but again, it's fairly rare. Usually we are talking about adverse food reaction, because in most cases we don't really know what's going on, and usually it's food intolerance. And again, it's also the thing that modern veterinary medicine and modern veterinary dermatology is working on, but very often the actual mechanism of why certain adverse food reaction occurs, why certain intolerance occurs, is not really known. However, what is known, that the intestinal barrier, the state of microbiota, the usage of prebiotics has a massive impact on dogs with adverse food reactions, especially with the atopic dogs, allergic dogs, because the significant damage to the gastrointestinal mucosa with degradation of the microbiome can lead to the effect that proteins become allergen due to the damage in intestinal mucosa. And then we have the local abnormal immune system reaction, because the antigens that would normally not go through the mucosa, they go through because it's damaged. And then we have the issue, and that's actually it's considered to be one of the main reasons behind several enteropathies, with the IBD being the chief example here. There are also some other interesting factors when we are talking about food allergy. So very important to remember are multiple hypersensitivities. So it's very rare. It's fairly rare that the dog or cat is allergic just to one protein. Usually, around half of them are allergic to more than one food component. There are cross reactions. It's not still proved in pets. It happens in humans. Therefore, it hasn't been tested in pets, but I don't see the reason why it wouldn't occur in pets as well. So the very fairly famous bird egg syndrome of humans. So secondary chicken meat and egg yolk allergy due to the primary sensitization to bird feathers. So first we get allergic to bird feathers, and then as the result, we end up having also the allergy to chicken meat or egg yolk or turkey meat or other bird meat which feathers we were exposed to. And a very important cross reaction across taxonomically related species. So, and that's actually proved in pets, that very often dog, which, let's stick to that poor chicken, dog that is allergic to chicken would also present the allergy to turkey or a duck, for example. And now just this chart, I show you this chart to show you that this poor chicken poultry is actually not as allergenic as people might think. Now, these days, when you talk to people and you ask whether your dog is allergic to something, first of all, most of people, that's at least coming from my experience, they would say, yes, it is allergic to something. And if you ask, oh, poor dog, what it is allergic to, and then they would go chicken, obviously. Now, the problem with chicken is there are several factors here. Two main ones are the fact that the chicken is very abundant, so it's present in almost every single pet food product on the market. I would say 90% of pet food products contain chicken protein in one form or another. So that makes it abundance of chicken makes it, let's say, the frequency of cases more often. And another thing is that the quality of the chicken is very important. So the quality of the raw material that was used. And actually, there is a very interesting paper that is comparing the allergic effect of chicken protein compared to comparing different sources of poultry. So high quality ones, so for example, human grade chicken fillet and chicken byproducts, which are usually used for pet food production. So quality of the ingredient is also very important, and the fact that very often, as we already established, it's not allergy itself, it's rather some sort of intolerance or adverse food reaction that is going on. Now, briefly about the epidemiology. Prevalence is unclear because owners, as I said, report allergies as very, very common. But usually it's based on the not correct response of the pet to the diet modification. So very often you would have some sort of reaction coming from the pet, either gastrointestinal reaction or a skin reaction when you change food. But it's not connected to the allergy or adverse food reaction as such. It's just the bad reaction on the new food. It doesn't mean that something is wrong either with the food or with the pet. Now, proper confirmation of adverse food reaction requires systematic workup. It's very, very difficult to do it. It takes weeks and months to diagnose adverse food reaction or food allergy, for that matter. So not many people, not many veterinarians decide to go that route because of the low compliance from the pet owners. Now, when we're talking about some other data regarding epidemiology, you can see that up to 5% of all dermatological problems and up to 15% of all inflammatory dermatosis, some skin inflammations that are diagnosed in pets. So those percentages, as you can see, compared to the perception of people, are not really high. Let's say the actual amount of pets that are suffering from some sort of adverse food reaction is actually quite big, because dermatological problems is a huge thing. But remember that dermatological problems are not only connected to food. They are very often connected to endocrinological problems or parasitology problems, right? It doesn't need to be connected to food, but the sheer amount of pets that are suffering from dermatological issues make this 5% actually quite a big amount of pets. So it's still, from a clinical standpoint and also commercial standpoint, very important segment of products that are designed to help with the adverse food reaction treatment. So some other percentages, now take them with a grain of salt. There are many different papers, scientific papers, that are trying to approach this topic, and the amount of the percentages, that, let's say, the scale of can be really different from research to research. It's very difficult to catch the actual amount of how serious this, from epidemiological standpoint, this topic is. So here's some other data. Up to 6% of cats with skin signs are suffering from adverse food reaction. Up to 22% of cats with gastrointestinal signs are suffering from adverse food reactions. And actually, this is very, because 22% now we are talking, this percentage is really big. And it's even bigger when it comes to dogs. Up to 60% of dogs with chronic enteropathies respond to dietary changes. So when we are talking about enteropathies as such, food responsive enteropathies, so FRE, are on the bottom of this pyramid. So great majority of patients with some sort of enteropathy will respond to the dietary change. It doesn't need to be the change that is changing the immune response in any way, shape or form. So it doesn't need to be connected to the allergic response or allergic reaction. We are in general talking about the dietary change, which can mean anything. But this is actually a very good news for us, because it means that most of dogs, if we change the nutrition, if we change the product that the dog is being fed with, we have 50-60% chance that it will react positively. And then we have antibiotic responsive enteropathies, enteropathies that responds to steroids, and then we have non-responsive enteropathies at the top of the pyramid. So enteropathies that don't respond to any sort of treatment. But again, luckily, most of them can be solved with the proper dietary change, even if we don't actually understand why the change why the dog improved, what was the mechanism behind it. And frankly saying, most of pet owners don't really care. If it helped, it helped, and they're happy about it. So food allergy can be divided into, as we mentioned before, skin symptoms, so cutaneous adverse food reactions, and gastrointestinal symptoms. And in most cases, they, let's say, the symptoms that are connected to the classic food allergy are connected to the skin. In most cases, again, those symptoms are not very specific. So we have non-seasonal, seasonal pruritus. In case of dogs, the pruritus that is located mainly around face, ears, feet, and perineum. We have, in case of cats, pruritus connected mainly to face and neck. In case of dogs, other symptoms are otitis, pyoderma, and seborrhea. In case of cats, alopecia, miliary dermatitis, and granulomas. So as you can see, not very specific. I mean, those symptoms can be connected to plenty of other dermatological issues, either endocrinological issues or, for example, parasitological issues. There is no season, age, or sex predisposition, but there is strong breed predisposition, especially when it comes to dogs. So, for example, you have case of some years ago, very popular breed, West Highland Terrier, which is well known to have all sorts of, skin-related predispositions in its sleeve. When it comes to skin, again, we are talking about skin adverse food reactions. They account for 6% of all skin diseases, so pretty high. 18% of our pruritic diseases, 20% of allergic diseases, and 29% of all atopic diseases. So again, pretty high percentages. Now we are talking about skin symptoms, right? Excluding gastrointestinal symptoms, which again are even less specific, because when we are talking about gastrointestinal symptoms, usually we are talking about diarrhea, vomiting, and increased frequency of defecation. So not really helpful here. But what is important, that 10 to 16% of dogs and cats with skin adverse food reactions, cutaneous adverse food reactions, they also present gastrointestinal symptoms. So you always need to keep that in mind. If you have dermatological patient which is also presenting the gastrointestinal symptoms, there is fairly big chance that it's food related. So what is the whole diagnostic process? So first of all, we need to rule out all other potential causes of allergy, right? So atopy, flea bite dermatitis, and drug hypersensitivities. Extremely important and extremely difficult part. So obtaining full diet history. I mean, in case of pets, it's a bit easier than with humans, because if I would ask you what you had for breakfast last Thursday, some of you might not remember that. I mean, it's not something we just keep in our mind. However, with pets, it's fairly easier, because usually they have very simple diet. I mean, they usually eat one type of product that for a prolonged period of time. However, especially in case of older patients, to remember what exactly what proteins, what products my pet was exposed to over the course of its life, it can be pretty tricky, but it's really important to at least try to obtain this history. We can also do the intradermal skin testing, serological testing, but they are very unreliable. They can indicate something. They can be like a hint. However, there's tons of research proving that they're not very useful due to the cross reactions, multiple hypersensitivities. The allergens tend to pile up in clusters, which then would, present themselves serologically. So, for example, pork allergy will very often present itself serologically as beef allergy, and problem is that very, very often serological response doesn't equal clinical response. So what it tells us very often is that immune system is at some sort of hypersensitivity state. However, it just because something occurs in the blood test doesn't mean that we need to do anything about it, because very often there would be no clinical sign at all. And actually, I mean, we need to treat the clinical signs, right? We need to treat the patient, not the blood test. So the only proper way of adverse food reaction diagnosis is the food trial. And the food trial is a very, very difficult thing to perform, because it requires high compliance from the pet owner. So what is the proper food trial? So first of all, we need to feed the elimination diet. So it's some sort of, we need to reset the symptoms. So we are providing the pet with a novelty protein, so the protein that the pet was not exposed to before. Preferably, it's a single protein, single carbohydrate source product. We gradually introduce it to the diet over the course of 4, 5, 6, 7 days. It depends on the pet and on the vet that is prescribing the product. And then usually within sometimes days, sometimes weeks after we introduce the product to the diet of the pet, we see the improvement, and that's this period of resetting the symptoms. Usually it lasts between 6 to 12 weeks. And then after we saw the improvement, we should go through the challenge diet, right? So we should re-expose the pet to the previously used food to confirm that, yeah, that was the issue. It suffers from adverse food reaction. Either it's intolerance or it's allergy, not clear, but definitely it reacts to that. And actually, that's the part that very, very few owners actually decide to do. Sorry. I mean, usually after we go through this reset period, so we introduce some sort of hypoallergenic diet to the diet of the pet, and the symptoms went away. Usually that's where the pet owners want to stop. They are happy to continue on the diet. They don't want to challenge anything. They don't want to check anything. Pet is fine. It will be kept on that diet. And that's one of the reasons why that sort of products are so popular commercially, because on paper you should use them for those, for example, hypoallergenic type of products. You should use them for several weeks and then ciao, unless you have the pet that is reacting to every other sort of product except this one. Then yeah, okay, that's the diet for the lifetime. But in most cases, you should go through the proper challenge diet section, confirm which proteins, which foods are not really tolerated by the pet, and then find the regular maintenance life stage product that would fit its needs. But it's very rare. Usually people want to stick to something that worked in the first place. And then the third step, which is purely pure theory, very, very few patients go through this part. So after we challenged one product, the previous diet, we confirmed, yeah, that particular product was an issue. we reset the symptoms once more, and then we challenge the pet with all other sources of proteins, carbohydrates that we think might cause issues. But that's very, very rare, and very few people actually decide to go that route. So, how the elimination diet should look like? So, first of all, it should contain limited number of new and novelty and highly digestible proteins, potentially hydrolyzed protein. Have a lower protein content than the usual foods, but actually that's more beneficial when we are talking about food intolerance, because when we are talking about food allergy, classic food allergy, even small amount of proteins, minimum amount of proteins will cause the clinical response. So it doesn't really matter that much. Obviously, avoidance of additives and vasoactive amines. In general, the perfect elimination diet should be very concise, very short labeled. It should be as simple product as possible to avoid any possible cross reactions and so on. Be nutritionally adequate for animals' life stage and condition, and usually even hypoallergenic products are formulated in a way that theoretically they can be used for the lifetime. In some cases it's not the perfect case scenario, but because people, as I said before, use hypoallergenic diets for a lifetime anyway, because it worked, the pet is fine on that, so I'll stick to that. The producers try to formulate hypoallergenic diets not just like they were meant to be used for 6 or 12 weeks, but for the lifetime. The addition of omega-3 with high anti-inflammatory effect is very welcomed. So any addition of high quality fish oil is something which is always welcomed, and all sorts of vitamins and antioxidants to reduce the oxidative stress. So when it comes to that expert portfolio, what could be the solution here? We have actually very big and very nice portfolio when it comes to adverse food reactions, which gives you answers to most of the clinical cases that you can meet on the market. With one exception, we still don't have the hydrolyzed diet, but that's coming really soon, and next year I can basically promise you that will be part of our portfolio. Also, hydrolyzed protein diet for all these very difficult cases that don't react to any other treatment. But for now, a very good quality hypoallergenic insect, which is not hydrolyzed protein, but it is a novelty protein. I mean, insect protein is not something very common in dog's diet. Therefore, it can work really well. And actually, the product is composed by the book. I mean, it's I'll show you later on the label. It's very short, very simple, like the proper elimination diet for with food allergy in mind should look like. And then we have a bunch of products for I marked here for food intolerance, but actually they can work really well for all these patients with confirmed allergy to one protein or another. There are monoprotein diets, monocarbohydrate diets, but composed, so whole dermatosis line is composed as a dermatological line, which can be used also as a hypoallergenic product, but compared to hypoallergenic insect, I'll show you in a second, they look way more like a normal, very high quality life stage product. So for the lifetime feeding, I definitely recommend dermatosis line, either salmon or rabbit, for the lifetime nutrition. When it comes to hypoallergenic insect, I would really recommend to stick to the elimination diet period. Or of course, for all these problematic patients that simply cannot be on anything but insect. And then we have the entire portfolio of products from elimination line, which I also put into this chart because they are hypoallergenic products, dermatological products, with the added benefit. Or we can turn it around and call the dermatological effects of those products the added effect. So we have product for renal insufficiency, gastrointestinal disorders, and joint support. So all these three products can work separately as very high quality kidney diet, very high quality gastrointestinal diet, and very high quality mobility type of diet. However, they all have this added benefit of being also dermatological diets. They are all composed from high quality proteins, one source of protein. So there is one source of animal protein, one source of carbohydrate. So very high level of omega-3, very high level of zinc. So they are dual function diets, which are very unique to the market. There are some products on the market. I believe Hills has the product called ID sensitive, which, let's say, the mode of action of the product is similar to intestinal elimination, but that's it. When it comes to renal elimination, mobility elimination, there are unique products on the market, which if I were you, I would use as the door opener, because that's actually something that VetExpert portfolio, something extra that VetExpert portfolio can bring to the table and can bring to the to each single veterinary practice in the world, because those products are just so unique, not just from the mode of action standpoint, but also from the quality standpoint, which I shall demonstrate in a second. So speaking about the formulation of dermatosis and hypoallergenic, as you can see, I mean, it's clearly visible how simple and how short the label of hypoallergenic insect is compared to dermatosis line. That's why I said, to me, dermatosis products are more lifetime dermatological problems for all the pets with either dermatological issues or adverse food reactions issues, while hypoallergenic insect, to me as a professional, is more a clinical tool designed for the elimination diet. Take a look at the sheer quality of the ingredients which are used here. If you would compare this to your typical dermatological diet that you can find in portfolio of the big brands out there, I mean, you'll be shocked how big gap there is between the quality of the raw material that was used to produce this versus most of the products that are available on the market. The level of fresh ingredient of high quality that was used, the level of animal sourced ingredient that was used is just unbelievable. And then you have, as I said, hypoallergenic formula, very short, very concise, perfect for the elimination diet. Same story here in case of the cat product. You have first three ingredients of, first of all, very high quality and animal sourced, or I should use the other way around. So first of all, animal sourced ingredients, but of very, very high quality from the name source and so on. This product, so Dermatosis Cat, is also formulated as really high quality, maintenance product. It can be used for life without any issues, but in the same time, it meets all Parnat regulations for the dermatological product. And then we have elimination line. Again, from analytical standpoint, if you look at the level of protein, fat, fiber, we can say typical gastrointestinal diet. But then when you look at the composition, so we'll find out from where those analytical values are coming from. You'll find the absolutely exceptional quality of the raw material. Again, low level of fat for pancreatic insufficiency, 8% is really, really low. Bear in mind, there are products on the market, gastrointestinal market, with really high levels of fat, and they cannot be used for pancreatitis or exocrine pancreatic insufficiency. So always do compare, and always look for the product with as low fat level as possible. Low level of fiber for increased digestibility. Again, same properties as we discussed in case of gastrointestinal diet. Really high level of MOS and FOS, so mannanoligosaccharides and fructooligosaccharides. 1,000 milligrams per kg is really high, among highest integrations on the market. And look here, 47% of the product is turkey. If you compare it to, and it's just that from animal protein standpoint, this is a monoprotein diet, so there is only turkey and that's it. And if you look at the competitors, so other gastrointestinal diets, and you look at the composition, you'll be amazed on how well this product looks like. Same for mobility elimination, right? So really smart, really well designed joint diet with ultra high level of omega-3. I think only Hill's JD has a higher level of 3.3 or 3.4. So really minor difference here. So really high amount of omega-3. Low level of fat, 13%, and higher level of fiber, which actually in case of mobility type of product is very, very good to use, because most of dogs that suffer from osteoarthritis, they also suffer from overweight or obesity. So actually the weight management of such dog is extremely important. Again, exceptional quality of the raw material, very high levels of glucosamine and chondroitin. They're not as important as omega-3 integration, but still they are there, and they meet the, let's say, the industry standard when it comes to joint diet, mobility type of diet. And again, over 30% of the product is salmon, either freshly prepared salmon or salmon oil, or salmon gravy. Also pay attention here, there is no chicken oil in the product, right? I mean, so the oil of the product, the fat of the product is based on salmon. So it's very rare that the products match when it comes to protein source and the fat source. And as I told you before, fat is not something that is causing allergies, right? I mean, it's proteins or sometimes carbohydrates in case of intolerances is something that we need to pay attention to. However, the pet owners more and more often know how to read the labels, are very interested in reading labels. They want to know what they are feeding their pets with, and actually matching the source of protein with the source of fat is a very, very welcomed addition. Now, renal elimination. Again, in case of this product, we had to be way more careful and more thorough. Chronic kidney disease, and the nutrition which we apply to chronic kidney disease is something that which we need to be very extremely careful about. So very simple label, meeting all the requirements of chronic kidney disease. We'll be talking about chronic kidney disease in a second, but I just wanted to show you the product already, connected to the adverse food reaction topic we spoke about minutes ago. So low level of proteins, low level of phosphorus, and low level of sodium. So classic kidney diet, with also fairly high amount level of omega-3. In this case, not just with anti-inflammatory action, but also helping to maintain the adequate renal perfusion. And also on the top of that, so on the top of being high quality renal diet, being also monoprotein diet designed for with this dual functionality, so not just kidneys but also skin or adverse food reactions. And now the urinary tract. So we will briefly go through upper urinary tract and lower urinary tract. And it's very important because people who are not vets or the people without any biological degree sometimes mix those things up. It's very important to know that lower urinary tract diseases are not connected with upper urinary tract disease. I mean, they can be, but very often there are two separate things. So kidneys are kidneys, and bladder and urethra are bladder and urethra. So it's also very important to remember that, for example, if you have a lot of like urinary type of products, either diets or even maintenance food or supplements, urinary type of products are not designed for kidneys. Kidneys is a separate pair of shoes. Okay. So we will start from upper urinary tract, so kidneys, and with the most important kidney disease, which is a chronic kidney disease. And it's very, very serious. It's number one cause of death in cats, number three of cause of deaths in dogs. It affects 30% of cats over 15 years of age, 15% of dogs over 10 years of age. Very tricky to catch, to diagnose properly on early stage, because it takes over 75% of kidney damage before any symptoms occur, clinical symptoms. Of course, we can catch certain things earlier by doing blood tests, but that requires, systematic checkups. Not everyone is doing that. Extremely debilitating condition. It's usually divided into 4 stages, which are called stage 1, 2, 3, or 4, or IRIS 1, IRIS 2, IRIS 3, IRIS 4. IRIS is the organization that is working on the kidney patients and also providing us with the guidelines and recommendations when it comes to kidney disease. But actually, untreated kidney failure, untreated chronic kidney disease is something that kills the patient really, really quickly. And from nutritional standpoint, I mean, we have several different things that we need to approach, but most important things, we need to slow down the progression of the disease. We won't stop it. Chronic kidney disease, once it occurs, it's there and it won't go away. I mean, kidneys are not able to regenerate themselves as well as liver does. However, with the proper nutritional management, we can significantly slow down the progression of the disease. And what are the main angles that we need to approach? So first of all, highly digestible and high quality proteins, mainly to reduce the azotemia and slow down the progression of the disease. No, important thing, I mean, of course, it's not up to you. It's, according to the modern knowledge of the given veterinarian and how well updated he is with the modern knowledge about the kidney disease. But actually, when it comes to proteins, it's not as crucial on the first stages to actually limit the amount of proteins. We don't need to care about proteins that much. However, all chronic kidney disease products are designed with lower amount of proteins already. So, I mean, in theory, we don't need to lower down the amount of proteins immediately. It depends on the stage of the disease and the state of the patient. However, when we introduce the proper diet, then usually it also means the amount of proteins is significantly lower than in regular food. It needs to be highly palatable, first of all, to compensate negative low protein content effect, but also for the reasons which I explained earlier. Sick pets usually have issues with appetite. And most important thing is actually should be on the top of that list, low phosphorus. And phosphorus is usually the first thing we need to approach. So elevated phosphorus level is the most crucial thing that we need to take care of when we are talking about kidney patient. There are some blood factors that can indicate that phosphorus level will go up even before phosphorus actually goes up. For example, growth factor number 23. There are more and more blood parameters that we can check to see on which stage of the kidney disease we are, or whether there is a kidney disease at all. But actually, in real life, in real case scenario, usually we approach the patient with already developed disease, and phosphorus level is already elevated. And actually, it's extremely crucial to take care of phosphorus. And phosphorus is, of course, there are supplements, there are medications which can bind the phosphorus level and decrease the phosphorus level in blood. But the main source of phosphorus in the body is food. So that's why the dietary level of phosphorus in case of chronic kidney disease must be really, really low. Why? First of all, when you have damaged kidney, the phosphorus is not being filtered properly, so the level of phosphorus in blood gradually increases. That leads to the calcium release from blood, because more phosphorus, if we have high phosphorus level in blood, it triggers the parathyroid hormone, PTH, which then leads to, it releases, one of the roles of PTH hormone is to release calcium from the bones, and they end up in blood. So we have the situation when both phosphorus and calcium are very high, which leads to, because kidneys are damaged, and they are not able to filter all this phosphorus and calcium in blood, they're getting even more damaged. And the vicious cycle goes on. If not approached properly, usually the cycle is rather quick, and ultimately leads to patient's death. And actually, that's phosphorus. That's why it's so important to take care of it, because that's actually what kills the patient in the first place. So from nutritional standpoint, it's extremely important to avoid commercial maintenance diet. Usually they have acidifying properties, which might increase metabolic acidosis. Actually, renal type of diets are the products which we want to, we want to achieve the alkalizing effect of those products, while most of, especially cat designed maintenance product, have the opposite function. They have acidifying properties to prevent the urinary stone problems. I already explained how the renal elimination product is designed, so let's skip that. So what I want you to remember is, low protein, low phosphorus, low sodium, and high omega-3 content. This is for dog. For cat, we have the wet version of the product, and actually the let's say the principle. No matter in this presentation, I focus mainly on dry products, but basically the principle behind the mode of action of dry and wet diets is the same. Of course, wet diets are composed differently because they contain way less carbohydrates and way more water, way more moisture. Therefore, when you are comparing wet product to the dry product, you always need to calculate the dry matter value. So you always need to calculate the analytical values of the product if you would remove the moisture from the product, because then you would see the actual number of protein, fat, fiber, and so on, which would be close to the dry equivalent, because in dry products, moisture is usually on the level between 6 to 9%. So always calculate dry matter values, especially when you're comparing wet product to dry product, or you're comparing two wet products, because when it comes to dry food, moisture levels are very similar across all the products on the market. When it comes to wet products, you can have wet products with 60% moisture. You can have products with 85% moisture, and that gives you big differences when you are looking at the label and you try to compare protein level to protein level, fat to fat, and so on, or phosphorus to phosphorus. You always need to calculate the dry matter values. Okay. Now, lower urinary tract. So we went through upper urinary tract, which is mainly connected to chronic kidney disease. Now we'll go through lower urinary tract infection. Not just infection, but in general, lower urinary tract diseases. So LUTD, so lower urinary tract disease. And usually we have, first of all, they are connected to bladder and urethra. And we have two main diseases here. So urolithiasis and idiopathic cystitis. And of course, whether we speak about young cats, older cats, or dogs, there are different diseases that occur more or less frequently. However, urolithiasis is a disease that is very typical for cats of all age and dogs of all age, for that matter. It's more connected to cats, and it's definitely more serious thing when it comes to feline medicine, but it doesn't mean that in case of dogs we are not having similar issues. We do. And when it comes to lower urinary tract diseases and that expert nutritional solution for those cases, our portfolio is okay. However, especially if we take into consideration the supplements that we also have in our portfolio. However, if we want to stick to diets only and pet food only, there are certain gaps which you can see here. So first of all, we don't have the product for oxalate prevention or control, and I doubt we'll ever have it. I'm still thinking about it, but it's a very niche type of product, and not sure if it's necessary to have it, especially that oxalate stones cannot be really controlled. I mean, they can be controlled, but cannot be prevented or cannot be removed with the modification of the diet. Unlike struvites, which can be, which we can dissolve and we can get rid of them simply by modifying the diet. And here the portfolio is as follows. We have dry version and wet version of urinary product for cats. For now, only wet version for dogs, but dry version of this product should appear on the market next year, in the second half of next year. So then, let's say the struvite portfolio should be complete on the side of the vet diets. Now, speaking about urolithiasis, of course, most of you know that two main types of stones that we are dealing with are either struvites or oxalates, and actually 90% of urolithiasis are related to struvite or calcium oxalates. Of course, there are other types of stones, like cystine stones, for example, but they're all fairly rare. And basically, uroliths represent the consequences of mineral precipitation within the urinary system. So basically, if there are some metabolic issues that are going on in the body of the pet, and we are supplying certain type of mineral with the diet to that pet, and it's not managed properly for many different reasons, that leads to precipitation within the urinary system, and then we have the stone issue. And what is very important here, on the left hand side, you see the pH chart. So it's very important to remember that struvite stones precipitate in on higher pH levels, while oxalate stones precipitate in lower pH levels. So it's very important to be extremely careful when because most of the products available on the market, which are designed for urolithiasis treatment, are their mode of action is based on the changes in pH, on pH levels. So for struvites, it's usually acidifying properties. In case of oxalates, alkalizing properties. But especially when it comes to struvites, it's very important to check pH regularly. So when we start the diet, it's important to check the pH on a regular basis, just not to go with a pH level too low, because then we'll go from struvite problem to oxalate problem. And then we are screwed, because struvites will go away because they dissolve really nicely if we use the correct diet. And then the oxalates will appear in the urinary tract, and then our possibilities are very limited then, because they won't dissolve. They will precipitate and they will stay there unless we remove them surgically. So uroliths represent consequences, as I said, of mineral precipitation, and there are different mineral types that are involved. As I said, usually we are talking about calcium oxalate, but there are also cystine stones, ammonium urate, struvites. So number 1 and number 4 by far most frequently seen stones in the lower urinary tract of pets. Mixed stones, very difficult to diagnose and also very difficult to manage, because we have, it's the combination of, for example, struvite and oxalate, or we have combination in the when we are checking the what's happening within the urine. We see the presence of both struvite and oxalate stones, and then we need to decide which route we should take to help the patient, and also silica stones. And now, regarding the prevalence and the epidemiology, there is a very interesting study done by the University of Minnesota and their Minnesota Urolith Center, when they were checking the both canine and feline uroliths distribution, and how it changed over the course of 30 years, basically. And what is very interesting is how, as you can see, the quality of this picture is not very high, but what you can see, the blue color is MAP, which is the struvite stone, and this greenish yellowish color is calcium oxalate. And as you can see how it shifted from, in case of dogs, from being basically struvite only to the situation where actually there are more oxalate stone patients than struvite patients. And in cats, it's even more dramatic. I mean, in mid-80s, you have basically only cats that were suffering from struvite stones. And then it shifted to the, let's say, 50-50 scenario. And today, if you would ask a vet, practicing vet, what is the ratio of struvite to oxalates, they would say around 50-50. And that may be true, but does it really mean that in 30 years struvite occurrence declined while oxalate rose? Not really. I mean, first of all, the widespread use of magnesium-restricted and acidifying diets or supplements, which work as struvite prevention, that led to predisposition of oxalate. So let's say in nature, there are still more, let's say, struvite cases than oxalate cases. And then the widespread of diets designed to dissolve struvites because they dissolve really well. You don't need to perform the surgery. So, I mean, if you give to the patient the choice, you either eat certain type of food for 2 or 3 months and they should be gone, or we can perform the surgery, they would usually go with a diet, right? So because of that, because the samples sent to Minnesota Urolith Center were usually samples where the vet had some issues with. They couldn't really handle the patient. They couldn't really figure out what's exactly wrong. And because of the widespread usage of the diets designed for struvite dissolution, most of the samples that were sent to the lab were having, were containing oxalate stones, and that was just rising over the years. So when dissolution is possible, in case of struvites, we can either go with the surgery or dissolution. In case of oxalates, unfortunately, it's basically only surgery. We can provide a diet which is designed for oxalate stones. There are such diets on the market, but we won't get rid of the stones. We can only control their level. We can prevent more stones from precipitating in the urinary tract, but that's it. In case of phosphate stones, surgery; urate stones, surgery; cystine stones, surgery or dissolution. But okay, phosphate, urate, cystine stones, not very important from clinical standpoint. They are not very common. But what is very important from practical standpoint is that for struvites, we can dissolve or perform surgery. In case of oxalates, basically only surgery. So when it comes to struvite stones, because struvite is a stone which is composed from magnesium, ammonium, and phosphate ions, therefore let's say the clinical approach means that we need to restrict the level of magnesium, level of phosphorus, and level of proteins to limit the ammonium level. So also very important to remember, bacterial contamination is a huge factor leading to struvite stones. Single big meals per day. I will show you a chart in a second explaining that. Alkaluria, so if the pH level is, let's say, over 7.0, 6.8, that is the risk factor, and high concentration of magnesium, ammonium, and phosphate. However, on this point, most of high quality, good quality life stage products already have this issue in mind. So usually the magnesium and phosphate levels are, let's say, on the low enough level not to cause the struvite issue. But again, it's not only about the integration of those or concentration of those minerals in the diet, but also other factors which are involved in the pathomechanism of the disease. So, what is from nutritional standpoint? So we have the problem. So we have the struvite problem, because that's the only, from nutritional standpoint, the only stone that we'll be dealing with. As I said, in case of oxalate stones, basically surgery is the only way. So in case of struvite dissolution, what we need to provide with the diet are acidifying additives. The most classical one being DL-methionine, but then each single producer is using different types of acidifying agents. So ideal urine pH in this case is 6.0 to 6.3, 5.8, 6.2, within the range of 6.0, give or take 0.2. Low magnesium level, low phosphorus level. As I said, those levels are directly affected by diet. And when cat is healthy or dog is healthy, we can be sure that good quality life stage product, as I said, will have those minerals in check. However, if the problem is already there and we have the struvite issue, we need to make sure that the magnesium and phosphorus level are way below what we'd usually find in a life stage product. Avoid other food. We need to increase the urine volume. So first of all, from my perspective, the best way is to start with wet product rather than dry. I know that as we discussed in case of kidney diet, I think very often it's the economical issue. I mean, it's very, very expensive to feed. I mean, with cat, it's less of an issue, but with dog, to feed the dog with the wet diet, if it's a bigger dog, it can be really, really pricey. But in perfect case scenario, I would suggest to use the wet products in the first place, to increase the urine volume, to make sure that the pet is hydrated properly. And those products, usually urinary type of products, usually contain higher levels of NaCl, because it increases polydipsia, so the amount of water which is accepted by the pet, consumed by pet, and therefore increasing the urine dilution. Moderate level of high quality proteins to decrease the amount of urinary urea. Preferably low level of carbohydrates. There is a study showing that high cereal content can be responsible for struvite development due to the alkalization of the urine, but I wouldn't care that much. I mean, it doesn't. Let's say the products that are designed for struvite dissolution are having so many acidifying additives that I wouldn't care about the amount of carbohydrates in the product. And now, small amount of food many times per day. Very interesting study showing how the pH level differs in cat. If we compare the feeding of cat once per day and then free choice feeding, so ad libitum. So in case of patients with struvite problem, with urinary tract problem, is very, very important to keep the pH level, as we said, as low as possible. And there is study showing that if we feed the cat once per day or twice per day, the pH level will actually be significantly higher compared to the same cat fed ad libitum. So if you have the patient with urinary tract problem, struvite problem, it's important to suggest not to feed, when we go out to work and then when we come back from work. Try to feed cat as frequently as possible. There are automatic feeders that can do that, or there are cats that can simply be fed ad libitum. So you just put the amount the daily ratio of the food to the bowel, and then the cat can gradually take the food, accept the food whenever it's hungry. But there are cats that simply cannot do that because they have issues with the appetite, and they would eat the daily dosage at once. Not preferable. So then for example, automatic feeders is something that can really work well in case of such patient. So urinary cat dry version of the product, again, quite similar story to hepatic or gastrointestinal. Classic urinary diet, high quality urinary diet, made of really high quality raw material, composed as the classic urinary diet should be composed according to the scientific data and according to the Parnat regulation. So low magnesium, low phosphorus level, addition of urinary acidifiers, increased level of sodium and chlorides to stimulate cats to drink water, which then increases the volume of urine output. And that's actually something which we want to achieve in case of urolithiasis, not just struvite urolithiasis, any urolithiasis. Therefore, again, I highly recommend wet products, cans or pouches in this case. An addition of cranberry, classic superfood used usually in correlation with urinary tract, but for a very good reason. It reduces the adherence of microorganisms, so bacteria of the urinary tract, and it decreases the risk of secondary bacterial infections. Now, when it comes to wet product, both cat or dog, same story really. So again, the mode of action is the same, just the composition of the wet product is way more simple because of the nature of the wet product. Low magnesium, phosphorus, increased sodium, chlorides, addition of cranberry as well in this case, and the addition of urinary acidifier. In this case, this is D-L-methionine. Important thing to point out, I think. Usually you cannot really mix urinary supplements, so supplements designed for urinary tract with the diet. So always pay attention whether the supplement contain acidifiers or not. This is very important because usually the diets that are designed for urinary tract diseases contain high amount of acidifiers, and if you add on the top of that, you add some supplement that is also acidifying the urine, you will just very quickly go down with pH way too low, and then you will jump from struvite problem into the oxalate problem or some other problem. Therefore, always pay attention whether the supplement is just the supplement that is designed to support the urinary tract, or it's the supplement that is designed for acidifying of the pH, acidifying of the urine, and dissolution of the stones. Always keep that in mind. Okay. And the last topic I want to discuss is the obesity. So obesity, which very, very often is not even considered a pathology for whatever reason, but according to the modern knowledge, it is a disease as serious as any other disease, or even more serious than them. So long story short, of course, obesity is a pathology which is characterized by excessive accumulation of fat in the body, which is caused by the energy imbalance. So imbalance between the energy that is consumed with food and energy that is spent for metabolical reasons or for physical activity. Same with overweight. Overweight is, let's say, the stage before the obesity. So first we have overweight, slight overweight, overweight, or moderate overweight. Then we have significant overweight, and then we end up with obesity. It obviously depends from breed to breed, case to case. The body conformation of each single pet is a bit different. Therefore, we have tools like body condition score to evaluate on which stage the pet already is. So, as I said, basically, we have this balance between calories in and calories out. So this balance between energetic intake, which can be caused by the intake of elements rich in energy or irregular intake of food, and irregularity in spendings, too low spendings, so which is caused by can be caused by sterilization, old age, and reduced physical activity. Another reasons behind the obesity as a pathology are very similar to what's happening to us, to humans. So excessive ingestion of food too rich in energy, so food which is not let's say matching the lifestyle of the pet, because pets also do have lifestyle, which is, let's say, the effect of lifestyle of their owners, but there you go. Irregular meals and treats and low physical activity, sterilization, and all other metabolic issues that can occur in pets, senior age. And it is a very serious problem in developed countries. Obesity affects from 25 to 50%, sometimes even more. It depends from study to study, of adult population. And the main reason behind it is are the pet owners that are not recognizing obesity as a health problem, because to many people those cats look sweet, right? I mean, they if you look at them, I mean, they're very chubby and lovely. Then another problem, which is mainly connected with elderly people, even if they have cat which looks like the ones on the top, in their eyes it looks like that. It's always hungry. They always they always want to give some extra snack treat to the pet. Despite feeding the cat or dog with a regular diet, they would also use some leftovers from the table, and they would do it on a regular basis. It all leads to this imbalance in energy intake. And to many people, it's simply funny, right? I mean, those people seem to be proud to have pets like this, while it's not funny at all. And it's a huge responsibility for of vets, of pet owners, different types of organizations, and also companies like ours, to indicate that that overweight and obesity are serious diseases, which, when they are not treated, they lead to other diseases which can be fatal. And in most cases, not in all cases, but in most cases, just like in case of human beings, obesity is our fault. But in case of humans, we take responsibility of ourselves, right? It's usually our decision what we eat, how we eat, how we spend our time when it comes to physical activity, and so on. In case of pets, they rely on us. They rely on what we feed them with. So education is very important. Therefore, stuff like body condition score to, in an easy way, present to the owner where is the problem and on what stage of the problem we are at. And it's also your responsibility. I mean, as a whole industry, I'll talk to you now as we are part of one big industry, to educate people about overweight and obesity, which can be say consequences of not just too low physical activity or not right amount of food which is being fed. Classic mistake when you have the feeding table on the back of the pet food bag. Very often people would just go, okay, my retriever is 50 kg, so I would feed it for 50 kg dog. No, you should feed it for 30 kg dog. So you should always know what is the ideal body weight of the pet. So education, very, very, very important. And also the quality of the food, because quality of the food, the composition of the food, the raw material that was used to the production of the food, it also affects the way of how the potential overweight or obesity are developing, and possible consequences of untreated obesity. So shorter lifespan, skeletal system diseases, so all mobility and joint problems. That's why I said weight management is very important when we are talking about osteoarthritis patients. Cardiovascular diseases, diabetes mellitus, fatigue, exercise intolerance, reproductive system diseases, skin disorders, weakened immune system, and cancer, and many others. I mean, in general, untreated obesity leads to death sooner or later. And all these cases of, you can hear stories about dogs or humans or cats that were overweight or obese for most of their life, and they managed to get to the older age. Therefore, there is no problem, right? I mean, no, these are all anecdotes, right? Just because Winston Churchill had the lifestyle like he had, so very unhealthy lifestyle, and he managed to live over 90 years of age, it's not, let's say, the indication that, yeah, drink alcohol and smoke cigars every day and you'll live to 90 plus. No, it's just an anecdote. Okay, and the products which are designed for treatment of obesity, again, are pretty obvious in their formulation. So first of all, you have to have low level of fat, because fat is by far the most energetic ingredient and nutrient of them all. It provides around 3 times more energy per gram than proteins and carbohydrates. High level of fiber, very important, because it, first of all, it increases the satiety feeling of the pet, but also it decreases the caloric energy density of the product itself. And it's very important because, I mean, you can say, okay, no matter how caloric product I have, if I give it in just smaller amount, the pet will be fine. But then we can have issues, and it's partially true, but then we can have issues with nutritional deficiencies. So obesity, so products which were designed with overweight and obesity in mind, with treatment of obesity, you can be sure that they will provide low level of energy with a given amount, but in the same time, they will be 100% nutritionally adequate for the given pet. So very low metabolic energy value, because usually we are having 3,600, 3,700 kilocalories per kg. In this case, it's just above 3,000. Also very important in this case, in case of our product, addition of glucosamine and chondroitin to support joints, and also the addition of L-carnitine in very high amount. 2,500 milligrams per kg is really high, because it's actually the amino acid that is promoting, let's say, the lean body mass. So it promotes the muscle growth rather than the fat growth. And again, like in case of other products we discussed about, obesity in the wet version, wet form, same principle as with the dry version, same mode of action. Just always keep in mind to calculate the dry matter value if you want to compare one product to another. Okay, and that would be it. I think we are almost exactly on time. So thank you so much. I'll just stop sharing the screen. And now, if you have any questions, then please feel free to ask them. If those questions will appear later on, you can, of course, write us the mail, phone us, whatever, and we'll of course answer to those questions. So yeah, thank you. Now, I'm not sure if Magda is here.
Sebastian, always. I'm always here.
Fantastic. All right, so let's see if we have any questions. And I see one question: is there any plan for dry cat foods? I mean, yes, except of the products that are already in the portfolio. So intestinal, urinary, and dermatosis. There is the plan to add more and more dry cat products, with most important one being renal diet. That's something I'm currently working on. So hopefully next year we'll add more and more dry products to the cat portfolio as well. So, do we have any more questions?
Seems like not.
All right. So, if everything was clear, I'm really glad about that. And guys, I guess I wish you a good, pleasant day now and a good week. I also wish you all, nice winter break if you have one. Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday, and hopefully I'll see you soon, either during the online presentation or mainly we'll have a chance to meet face to face. Really looking forward to it. So once again, thank you all, and enjoy the rest of the week and the year, because it's coming to an end. So Happy New Year as well, if we don't see each other. So thank you all.